A crying black boy ran to a biker at a gas station and begged, "Please save my family." The biker didn't know this scared little boy, but he looked into those tearful eyes, saw the dirt on his bare feet, and couldn't walk away. That one choice to help turned into something nobody expected. The kid came out of nowhere. 1 second. Ryder was pumping gas into his Harley at the pump and go station off Route 7, listening to Big Joe argue with Tommy about whose bike needed new brake pads. The next second, a small figure burst from the tree line across the parking lot, bare feet slapping against the cracked asphalt. "Help!" The voice was high and desperate. "Please, somebody help!" Ryder's hand went instinctively to his side, where he kept nothing but his phone. These days, old habits from old times. He turned and saw the boy clearly now, under the buzzing fluorescent lights, maybe 7 years old, wearing torn SpongeBob pajamas, face streaked with dirt and tears. The kid was running straight for them. "Jesus," Big Joe muttered, already moving forward. The rest of the Iron Hawks, 8 bikers who'd spent the day riding for the Children's Hospital charity event, stopped what they were doing. Chains rattled, boots hit pavement. The boy reached Ryder first and grabbed his leather vest with both hands, his small fingers clutching the worn fabric like it was the only solid thing in the world. "Please," he sobbed, looking up with eyes so wide and terrified that Ryder felt something crack inside his chest. "Please save my family. They're hurting Grandma. They're going to hurt everyone." Ryder dropped to one knee, bringing himself eye level with the kid. He kept his voice calm, steady. The same voice he'd used talking down scared recruits back in Afghanistan a lifetime ago. "Hey, buddy, I'm Ryder. You're safe now, okay? Nobody's going to hurt you here." He gently pried one of the boy's hands free and held it. The kid's palm was ice cold despite the warm June night. "What's your name?" "See, Cody," the boy hiccuped, trying to catch his breath. "Cody Washington." "Okay, Cody. Good. You did the right thing asking for help. Now I need you to tell me what's happening. Where's your family?" Cody pointed a shaking finger back toward the woods. "Our farm. It's not far. Maybe 2 miles down Old Miller Road. These men came tonight. They have guns. They locked Grandma and my sister and brother in the cellar. I squeezed out through the window. Grandma told me to run and get help." "How many men?" Ryder asked. "I don't know. 5, maybe more." Cody's voice cracked. "My stepdad. He let them in. He was drinking and yelling. And then these men came with trucks. And Ryder, that was Sarah, the only woman in their crew, holding up her phone. "I'm calling 911. Wait." Tommy stepped forward, his face grim. Old Miller wrote, "That's Henderson territory. Cops won't get there in time. And even if they do," he didn't finish. But everyone understood. The Hendersons were a local gang that had been terrorizing this county for years, running drugs and stolen goods through foreclosed farms. They had half the sheriff's department on their payroll. A 911 call might not bring help. It might bring more trouble. Ryder looked at the boy, who was watching him with heartbreaking hope in his eyes. Like Ryder was a superhero who could fix everything. He thought about the $3,000 they just raised for sick kids at the hospital. He thought about the Iron Hawks motto stitched into every vest they wore, "Ride for those who can't." He thought about his own daughter, who'd be about Cody's age now, if cancer hadn't taken her 5 years ago. "We're riding," Ryder said, standing up. "Now," Big Joe nodded once, no questions asked. So did Tommy and Sarah and the rest. They'd followed Ryder through worse than this. "But what about Sarah?" called Deputy Martinez. Ryder cut her off. Ryder cut, already walking toward his bike with Cody's hand still in his. "He's one of the good ones. Tell him we have a child in danger at the Washington farm." Old Miller wrote, "Tell him Iron Hawks are responding and we need backup, not interference. He'll understand. Sarah was already dialing. Ryder lifted Cody onto the back of Big Joe's bike. Joe rode a big touring model with a passenger seat. He crouched down in front of the boy one more time. Cody, you're going to ride with Big Joe here. He's got kids of his own, and he's the safest rider I know. You hold on tight to him, and you take us to your family. Can you do that? Cody nodded, wiping his nose with his sleeve. You're really going to help? You're really going to save them? Ryder met the kid's eyes. I promise you, son, we're going to get your family out. All of them. It was a promise he had no business making, riding into Henderson territory with no plan and no backup, except 7 other bikers who were probably just as crazy as he was. But when Ryder looked at this terrified kid in SpongeBob pajamas who'd run through dark woods barefoot to find help, he knew there was no other choice. Some lines you just didn't cross. And hurting children and grandmothers was so far over that line, it wasn't even visible anymore. Mount up, Ryder called out, swinging his leg over his Harley. We ride in formation. Cody's going to direct us. Stay sharp and stay together. Engines roared to life, one after another, a thunderous chorus that echoed across the empty gas station. Cody wrapped his arms around Big Joe's waist, and Ryder saw the fear in the boy's eyes shift into something else. Hope. Let's go get your family, Ryder said. And then the Ironhawks rode into the night, following a 7-year-old's directions toward a farm where bad men with guns were holding innocent people hostage, riding toward trouble like they were born to find it. Headlights cutting through the darkness like lances. Behind them, Sarah's voice carried on the wind as she spoke urgently into her phone. Martinez, we need you now. The night was about to get a whole lot more interesting. The road unwound like a black ribbon through the countryside, flanked by dense woods that pressed in from both sides. Fog rolled across the asphalt and ghostly waves, caught in the glare of 8 motorcycle headlights cutting through the darkness. Ryder kept his eyes on the road ahead, but his mind was racing. No plan, no backup yet, just 8 bikers and a terrified kid heading straight into a hornet's nest. This was either the bravest thing he'd ever done, or the stupidest. Maybe both. Left here, Cody's small voice barely carried over the engine rumble. Big Joe's bike tilted into the turn, and the rest of the Hawks followed in tight formation. They'd been riding for maybe 10 minutes, leaving the main highway behind for increasingly narrow back roads. Out here, streetlights were a forgotten luxury. The darkness was absolute except for their headlights and the pale moon struggling through the fog. Ryder's radio crackled. Every Hawk wore an earpiece for group rides. Ryder, we got company, Sarah's voice came through. Behind us, single bike moving fast. Ryder checked his mirror and saw a lone headlight approaching quickly. His jaw tightened. Had the Hendersons spotted them already? Then the bike's blue and red lights flashed on. Stand down, Ryder said into his mic. That's Martinez. Deputy Carlos Martinez pulled alongside Ryder's bike, his personal Kawasaki rumbling beneath him. Even off duty, he wore his badge on a chain around his neck. He raised his visor and shouted over the wind. Sarah called me, said, "You were heading into Henderson territory. Kid's family is trapped." Ryder shouted back, "Old Washington Farm." Martinez's face went grim. He knew that name. Everyone in the county knew the Hendersons had been circling that property for months, trying to force the old woman to sell. "I'm riding with you," Martinez yelled. "But Ryder, if shooting starts, I have to call it in." "I can't. Nobody's asking you to break the law. Carlos, we're just making sure a kid's family is safe until proper backup arrives." Martinez nodded and fell into formation. Having a deputy with them changed the math, even if just slightly. It meant whatever they found, there'd be at least one official witness who couldn't be bought. "How much further, Cody?" Big Joe asked gently. "Close?" the boy whispered. "Real close. There's a mailbox shaped like a barn up ahead. That's our driveway. Ryder's radio crackled again. Ryder, you want us to kill the engines before we get there? Tommy asked. Roll and quiet. It was a good question. Surprise might be their only advantage. Negative, Ryder decided. They'll hear us coming regardless, and I want them to know we're here in numbers. Maybe they'll think twice about doing something stupid, or maybe they'll come out shooting, Big Joe muttered. But he didn't argue. The barn-shaped mailbox appeared in their headlights, leaning drunkenly on a rotted post. Big Joe slowed and turned into a rooted dirt driveway that disappeared into the fog. The other bikes followed, engines rumbling like rolling thunder. Through the quiet night, the farmhouse emerged from the mist like something out of a nightmare. It had probably been beautiful once, maybe 50 years ago. Now it was a decaying 2-story structure with peeling white paint, sagging porch, and broken shutters hanging at odd angles. But that wasn't what made Ryder's blood run cold. 3 pickup trucks were parked in a semicircle in front of the house. All of them expensive and new, completely out of place in this rural poverty. Men moved between the trucks and the barn, 5, maybe 6 of them, unloading wooden crates with the kind of careful precision that said those crates held something valuable or illegal, or both. Every single one of them wore the Henderson gang's colors, black leather with a red scorpion on the back. Hold position, Ryder said into his radio. He raised his fist and the hawk stopped about 50 yards from the house, forming a line. 8 bikes, engines idling, headlights illuminating the scene like a stage. The men at the trucks froze, hands dropped to waistbands where guns were likely tucked. For a long, tense moment, nobody moved. Then a figure stepped out onto the sagging porch. He was tall and lean, wearing a dirty white tank top despite the cool night. Even from this distance, Ryder could see the man swaying slightly. Cody, Ryder said quietly. Is that your stepdad? Behind Big Joe, Cody made a small, frightened sound. Yeah, that's Dale. Dale squinted into the headlights, raising one hand to shield his eyes. When he spoke, his words were slurred. Angry. The hell are you people? This is private property. Get off my land. Your land? Ryder called back. He killed his engine and climbed off his bike. The other hawks did the same, a choreographed movement that spoke of years riding together. That's funny, Dale, because the kid who lives here says his family's being held prisoner. Dale's face went from confused to enraged in a heartbeat. His eyes found Cody still sitting on Big Joe's bike. Cody, you little, how did you? Dale started down the porch steps, then stopped when he saw Martinez's badge glinting in the headlights. Wait, this is a misunderstanding. The boy, he gets confused. Where's the grandmother? Martinez stepped forward, his hand resting on his service weapon. Where are the other children? One of the Henderson gang members, a thick-necked man with a red bandana, walked toward them. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Evening, Deputy. This here's a private business transaction. The gentleman invited us here to help him with some storage issues, all legal and above board. Storage issues. Sarah's voice was sharp. At midnight with a 7-year-old running through the woods for help. Cody, Big Joe said softly. Where's your family? Where exactly? Cody's voice was barely a whisper, but in the tense silence, everyone heard it. The cellar. There's a door on the side of the house. They locked them in the cellar. The words hung in the air like a sentence. Ryder looked at the Henderson gang members, at the trucks full of illegal crates, at Dale swaying drunkenly on the porch, at the dark farmhouse where somewhere inside or below, a grandmother and 2 kids were locked away. Then he looked at his crew. Big Joe cracked his knuckles. Tommy's jaw was set like concrete. Sarah's eyes were blazing. Gentlemen, Ryder said, his voice deadly calm. We're going to that cellar and we're bringing that family out. You can step aside or you can try to stop us. Your choice. The Henderson gang members reached for their weapons, and that's when all hell broke loose. Now, Ryder barked. The Hawks exploded into motion like a well-oiled machine. This wasn't their first time handling trouble, not by a long shot. Big Joe grabbed Cody and dropped behind his bike for cover. Tommy and two others sprinted left toward the barn, shouting and revving engines they'd left running. The Henderson gang members spun toward the noise, confused, hands on their weapons but not yet drawing. It was exactly the distraction Ryder needed. Sarah with me. Ryder bolted right, circling wide around the house with Sarah and Martinez close behind. The fog was their friend now, swallowing them in gray mist before the gang could react. Behind them, Tommy's voice roared through the night. "What's in those crates, boys? You got a permit for whatever you're moving." Angry shouts erupted, boots pounded dirt, but no gunshots. Not yet. The Henderson gang was confused, caught off guard, trying to figure out how many bikers there were and where they'd all gone. Ryder rounded the side of the house, his eyes scanning in the darkness. There, a wooden cellar door set at an angle against the foundation, the kind that opened up from the ground. A rusty padlock hung from the latch. "Police, step back from that door." Martinez shouted toward the front of the house, his voice carrying authority. "I've got backup en route." It was a bluff. Backup wasn't coming for at least 20 minutes, if at all, but it bought them precious seconds. Ryder grabbed the padlock. Solid. He looked around and spotted a rusted crowbar leaning against the house's siding. Perfect. "Stand back," he told Sarah, jamming the crowbar behind the latch. He threw his full weight against it. The old wood splintered with a crack that seemed impossibly loud. The cellar door swung open, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. "Hello?" Ryder called down. "Ma'am, we're here to help. Your grandson Cody sent us." For a moment, nothing. Then a woman's trembling voice rose from the shadows. "Cody, is my baby safe?" "He's safe, ma'am. I need you to come up quickly. Bring the children." Footsteps shuffled on the stairs. A woman emerged, maybe 70 years old, with silver hair wild around her face. She was clutching two children, a girl about 5 with pigtails and a boy maybe 3 years old, both in pajamas and bare feet, both crying softly. The grandmother's face crumpled when she saw them. "Oh, thank God, Mrs. Washington." Martinez stepped forward, showing his badge. "I'm Deputy Martinez. You're safe now, but we need to move fast." Sarah was already scooping up the little boy, while Ryder helped the grandmother up the last steps. The little girl clung to her grandmother's nightgown, too scared to let go. From the front of the house, the sounds of the confrontation were escalating. Angry voices. Someone, probably Tommy, laughed mockingly. A bottle smashed. "We got trouble." Big Joe's voice crackled through Ryder's earpiece. "2 of them are heading inside. I think they're going for the stepdad." Ryder cursed under his breath. "Martinez, get them to the road. Sarah's got the van parked 100 yards back." "I'm not leaving you," Martinez started. "That's an order, Deputy," Ryder snapped. "Protect the family. Sarah, go with him." Sarah looked like she wanted to argue, but she nodded once and took the grandmother's arm. "Come on, ma'am. Let's get your grandbabies somewhere warm." They disappeared into the fog, moving quickly but carefully with the children. Ryder sprinted back toward the front of the house. As he rounded the corner, he saw 2 Henderson gang members mounting the porch steps. Behind them, Tommy and Big Joe were tangled up with the others near the trucks, shoving match. Not a brawl, but it could turn ugly fast. Ryder took the porch steps 3 at a time. Inside, he could hear Dale's slur shouting, "Where are they? Where's my money? You said I'd get paid when Ryder crashed through the front door. The interior reeked of beer and cigarettes." Dale stood in what might have once been a living room, now mostly bare, except for a stained couch and empty bottles. He was waving his arms at two Henderson gang members, too drunk to realize how much danger he was in. "Hey," Ryder's voice cut through the chaos. "Party's over." One of the gang members turned, reaching for his waistband. Ryder was faster. He closed the distance in 2 strides and drove his shoulder into the man's chest, slamming him against the wall. The gun clattered to the floor. The second gang member grabbed for Ryder, but Dale, in a moment of drunken confusion, stumbled between them. "What are you doing? You're ruining everything." "Dale Washington," Ryder growled, grabbing the stepfather by his shirt and shoving him toward the door. "You sold out your own family, you're done." Outside, engines roared. Through the window, Ryder saw the remaining Henderson gang members jumping into their trucks. Big Joe had smashed the headlights on one vehicle, and Tommy was blocking another truck's path with his bike. But they were retreating, clearly deciding this wasn't worth the fight tonight. The gang member Ryder had slammed against the wall, scrambled to his feet, and ran for the door, leaving his gun behind. His partner followed, both of them sprinting for the last truck. "That's right. Run!" Tommy shouted after them. "Tell your boss the Iron Hawks. Send their regards." The trucks roared to life, tires spinning in the dirt as they peeled out of the driveway, headlights bouncing wildly as they hit the road. And just like that, it was over. Ryder dragged Dale outside, where Martinez had circled back after getting the family to safety. The deputy had his handcuffs out before Ryder even asked. "Dale Washington, you're under arrest for child endangerment and conspiracy," Martinez said, snapping the cuffs on Dale's wrists. The stepfather was crying now, mumbling incoherently. Big Joe jogged over, slightly winded but grinning. "Everyone okay? Family safe?" Ryder confirmed. "Sarah's got them in the van." Tommy appeared from the barn holding up a crowbar. "Found another cellar entrance back there. These idiots were using the farm for storage. All right, saw at least a dozen more crates." "Don't touch anything," Martinez warned. "This is a crime scene now. I'll call it improperly once we're clear." Ryder looked back at the farmhouse. This place where a family had been terrorized in their own home. Then he looked at his crew. Dirty, breathing hard, but all accounted for. "Let's go home," he said. They rode back in a tight convoy, the support van in the middle with Sarah driving and the family safe inside. The fog had lifted slightly, and stars were visible now, scattered across the sky like distant promises. In the van, Cody sat squeezed between his siblings, holding his grandmother's hand. Through the window, he watched the bikers riding in formation, their taillights glowing red in the darkness. His grandmother squeezed his hand back. "You brought angels," she whispered. Cody thought they looked more like warriors. Either way, they'd come when it mattered most. Dawn was breaking over the Iron Hawks clubhouse when the convoy pulled into the gravel lot. The building sat on the outskirts of town, a converted warehouse with brick walls, steel doors, and enough security cameras to make a bank jealous. To outsiders, it looked intimidating. But inside, it was home. Ryder killed his engine and watched as Sarah parked the van near the side entrance. The family hadn't said much during the 30-minute drive, just huddled together in shocked silence. He couldn't blame them. An hour ago, they'd been locked in a cellar, terrified and helpless. Now they were being escorted by bikers to a place they'd probably heard scary stories about their whole lives. Big Joe opened the van door gently. "Welcome to our clubhouse, folks. I know it doesn't look like much from outside, but trust me, you're safe here." Cody climbed out first, his eyes wide as he took in the motorcycles, the Hawks logo painted on the wall, the tough L-looking men and women gathering around. For a second, Ryder thought the kid might be scared. Then Cody spotted him and broke into a tired smile. "You kept your promise," Cody said simply. "Always do," Ryder replied, ruffling the boy's hair. Sarah helped the grandmother out of the van, studying her when she wobbled on stiff legs. The two younger children, Emma and little Jake, clung to their grandmother's nightgown like lifelines. "Let's get you inside," Sarah said warmly. "We've got hot food, clean clothes, and beds if you need rest. Inside?" The clubhouse transformed from intimidating to welcoming. The main room held mismatched couches, a pool table, and walls covered with photos of charity rides and community events. String lights hung from the ceiling, giving everything a warm glow. The kitchen area bustled with activity. Several Hawks' wives and girlfriends had arrived, pulling out blankets and pillows from storage. Maria, Big Joe's wife, took charge immediately. She was a former ER nurse and could handle any crisis with calm efficiency. "Okay, babies. Let's get you checked out," she said, kneeling down to Emma's level. "Does anything hurt? Any cuts or bruises?" Emma shook her head shyly, but held out her foot. The sole was scraped and dirty from the cellar floor. "Nothing we can't fix," Maria said cheerfully, pulling out a first aid kit that looked equipped for field surgery. "How about we get you cleaned up, then some pancakes? You like pancakes?" Emma nodded, and for the first time since the rescue, she smiled. Cody sat at the long wooden table while Maria checked his feet, torn up from running barefoot through the woods. He didn't complain once, just watched everything with exhausted fascination. Jake, the 3-year-old, had fallen asleep in his grandmother's arms the moment they sat down. Tommy brought over steaming mugs of coffee and hot chocolate. "Figured you could use something warm," he said. The grandmother took the coffee with trembling hands. She hadn't said much since they'd rescued her, just thank you over and over until her voice gave out. Now she sat on the couch, holding her sleeping grandson, and stared at the bikers moving around her with stunned disbelief. Ryder sat down beside her, keeping a respectful distance. "Ma'am, I'm Ryder. We didn't get properly introduced back there." "Margaret," she whispered. "Margaret Washington." "And you? You saved us? I don't know how to." Her voice broke and tears started streaming down her weathered face. "My husband died 2 years ago. That farm was all we had left. Then Dale showed up, said he'd help us keep it running, and I was stupid enough to believe him. He brought those men. He let them use our land for their whatever they're doing. When I threatened to call the police, they locked us up." She looked at Ryder with red-rimmed eyes. "Cody's just 7 years old. He climbed out a window barely big enough for a cat. He ran through dark woods in his bare feet because I told him to find help. I sent my baby into the night because I couldn't protect him myself." Her hand shot out and grabbed Ryder's, squeezing so hard her knuckles turned white. "But he found you," she choked out. "He found you and you came. You didn't know us. You didn't know us anything. But you came anyway." Ryder squeezed her hand back, feeling that familiar ache in his chest. The one that never really went away. Not since losing his daughter. Washington, that's what we do. That's why the Iron Hawks exist. "I keep thinking," Margaret continued, wiping her eyes. "What if Cody hadn't found you? What if those men had? If they'd," she couldn't finish. "But they didn't," Ryder said firmly. "Your grandson is brave and smart, and your family is safe. That's what matters now." Across the room, Martinez appeared in the doorway and caught Ryder's eye, jerking his head toward the hallway. Ryder gently extracted his hand from Margaret's grip. "Excuse me a moment, ma'am." "Sarah's going to take good care of you." He found Martinez in the hallway, the deputy's face grave. "What is it?" Ryder asked. Martinez glanced back towards the main room, lowering his voice. "I made some calls on the way here, Ryder. This is bigger than we thought." "How much bigger? That farmhouse? It's been in Margaret Washington's family for 3 generations. 80 acres mostly paid off. Land like that is worth maybe $400,000. Martinez pulled out his phone, showing Ryder a document. But 6 months ago, someone filed a lien against the property. Claimed Margaret owed money on unpaid storage fees and equipment rental. There's forged paperwork all over this thing. Ryder's jaw tightened. Let me guess. The paperwork leads back to the Henderson gang. Not directly. That's what makes it smart. It leads to a shell company called Miller Holdings, LLC. But yeah, the Hendersons are behind it. They've been doing this all over the county, targeting old farms, elderly owners, people who can't afford lawyers. They fabricate debts, forge documents, then force foreclosures. Once they own the land, they use it for drug operations, stolen goods, whatever they need. How many properties? Ryder asked. That I know of. At least 5. Probably more. Martinez rubbed his face tiredly. The thing is, some people in the sheriff's department know about this, and they're not doing anything to stop it. Corrupt cops. Yeah, which means when I file my official report about tonight, it's going to reach the wrong people fast. Martinez met Ryder's eyes. The Hendersons are going to come back for that family and for you. Ryder looked back toward the main room, where Margaret was crying softly while Maria bandaged Cody's feet, where Emma was eating pancakes with a shy smile, where little Jake slept peacefully, finally safe. Let them come, Ryder said quietly. But they're not getting this family. Not now. Not ever. Martinez nodded slowly. You know what you're starting here, right? This isn't just about one rescue anymore. No. Ryder agreed. It's about shutting down a criminal operation that's been hurting innocent people for too long. He looked at Martinez. You in? The deputy was quiet for a moment, then smiled grimly. Hell, I rode into Henderson territory with you tonight, didn't I? I'm already in. Good, Ryder said. Because we've got work to do. By 9 that morning, the Ironhawks clubhouse had transformed into a makeshift operations center. Ryder stood at the head of the long table, a county map spread out before him, marked with red circles. Behind him, a whiteboard displayed names, dates, and connections drawn in hasty marker. All right, listen up. Ryder addressed the dozen hawks gathered around the table. Margaret and the kids were sleeping in the back rooms, finally getting real rest. Martinez gave us intel that this is bigger than one family. The Hendersons are running a land grab operation across the whole county. We need proof before we can shut them down. Sarah tapped her laptop. I've been digging into public records since we got back. There are at least 7 properties with suspicious liens filed in the last year. All elderly owners, all rural farms that we know of, Tommy added darkly. Right. So, here's the plan. Ryder pointed at Big Joe. Joe, you and Maria take the family to Child Protective Services this morning. Margaret needs emergency custody documentation to keep the kids away from Dale permanently. Make sure they know the kids are in protective custody and that Dale's in jail for child endangerment. Big Joe nodded on it. Maria's already gathering their documents. Tommy, I need you and Vic to hit the county recorder's office when it opens. Pull every land record you can find on Miller Holdings, LLC, and any properties with liens filed by them. We need dates, amounts, signatures, everything. What are we looking for specifically? Vic asked. Patterns, Martinez said, stepping forward. He'd changed into civilian clothes, but still carried his badge. Forged signatures, impossible timelines, any paperwork that doesn't add up. These guys are criminals, not experts. They'll have made mistakes. What about Dale? Sarah asked. The stepfather. He's the weak link. Ryder exchanged glances with Martinez. They'd already discussed this during a pre-dawn coffee run. Martinez pulled Dale's bank records legally through proper channels, Ryder said, emphasizing the last part. Martinez had called in favors with a judge he trusted. Sarah, I need you to go through them line by line. Dale's broke has been for years, so where'd he get money to drink himself stupid every night? Sarah pulled the documents across the table, already scanning them with sharp eyes. You think the Hendersons were paying him? I know they were, Martinez said. Question is, can we prove it's connected to the property scheme? If we can show Dale was paid to give them access to the farm, it strengthens our case that this whole operation is conspiracy and fraud. I'll find it, Sarah promised. Ryder looked around the table. The rest of you, I need you here keeping watch. The Hendersons know we hit them last night. They know we have their storage location. They're going to be pissed and they're going to want payback. Nobody comes in or out without authorization. Cameras stay alive and someone's on watch 24/7 in. What about you? Big Joe asked. Martinez and I are going to talk to some people. Quietly, Ryder folded the map. If the Hendersons have been doing this for over a year, someone else must know. Someone who might be willing to talk if they think the law is finally listening. The group dispersed with military precision. Big Joe woke Margaret gently, explaining they needed to handle some legal matters to protect the children. She was exhausted, but trusted them completely by now. These ruffle-looking bikers had proven themselves when it counted. Within an hour, 3 teams were deployed across the county. At the county recorder's office, Tommy and Vic waited until the clerk, a tired-looking woman named Helen, unlocked the doors. "Help you, gentlemen?" she asked wearily, eyeing their leather vests. "Yes, ma'am," Tommy said, turning on every ounce of charm he possessed. "We're doing some property research, looking into Miller Holdings LLC. Need to pull their filing records." Helen's expression shifted just for a moment from weariness to something else. Recognition. Fear. "Miller Holdings," she repeated carefully. "That's a lot of paperwork. It'll take time." "We've got time," Vic said, settling into a chair. Helen disappeared into the back. When she returned with a thick folder, her hands were shaking slightly. She set it down without meeting their eyes. Tommy opened the folder and started photographing pages with his phone. Liens, property transfers, loan documents, dozens of them. As he flipped through, patterns emerged. The signatures on the property owner acknowledgments all looked similar. Too similar. "These are forgeries," Tommy muttered to Vic. "Look at this. Margaret Washington supposedly signed this document agreeing to storage rental fees last March, but the signature doesn't match the one on her original deed from the ATAS." Vic leaned in, then noticed something else. "Tommy, look at the dates." 3 of these liens were filed on the same day, March 15th. Different properties, different owners, but all filed within an hour of each other. "Badge processing," Tommy said grimly. "They weren't even trying to hide it." Behind the counter, Helen was watching them nervously. Tommy caught her eye. "Ma'am, you okay?" Helen glanced toward the door, then leaned forward and whispered, "You're not the first people to ask about Miller Holdings, but you're the first ones who look like you might actually do something about it." At Child Protective Services, Maria sat with Margaret while Big Joe handled paperwork with the social worker, a kind-faced woman named Patricia. "The children have been through significant trauma," Patricia said, reviewing the police report Martinez had filed. "And with Dale Washington in custody for child endangerment, we'll absolutely grant emergency protective custody to Mrs. Washington." But what?" Big Joe asked. Patricia hesitated. "The address listed for Mrs. Washington is the farmhouse. That property is currently under investigation as a crime scene. She can't take the children back there." Maria squeezed Margaret's hand. "She's staying at our community center temporarily. It's secure, supervised, plenty of room. A biker clubhouse." Patricia looked uncertain. "A licensed community center," Big Joe corrected firmly. "We run youth programs, veteran support groups, and we're registered with the county as a nonprofit. I can provide all the documentation." Patricia studied him for a long moment, then smiled slightly. "You know, my husband is a Marine. He rides with a veterans motorcycle club. I think I understand." She stamped the paperwork. Emergency custody granted for 90 days, pinning full hearing. Margaret burst into tears of relief. Back at the clubhouse, Sarah's eyes were burning from staring at bank statements. But she'd found it. "Ryder," she called when he and Martinez returned from interviewing neighbors near the Washington farm. "Look at this," she pointed to Dale's account. 3 deposits over the past 6 months, $500 each, all from the same source, Miller Holdings, LLC. Memo line says, "Property access fee." "They paid him to let them use the farm," Martinez said, leaning over her shoulder. "That's conspiracy gets better," Sarah continued, scrolling down. "Dale withdrew cash the same day as each deposit. Probably spent it all on booze within a week." But here's the interesting part. Miller Holdings also made payments to 4 other individuals, different amounts, different dates, but all with the same memo, property access fee. She looked up at Ryder. "Those are probably the other property owners the Hendersons are targeting. If we cross-reference these names with the properties Tommy found, we've got a network," Ryder finished. "Not just one farm, a whole criminal operation." Martinez was already on his phone. "I'm calling my contact at the DA's office. This is enough for warrants." Ryder looked at the evidence spread across the table. Bank statements, forged documents, property records. They'd done it. In one morning, they'd uncovered enough to bring down the Hendersons' entire scheme. But as he stared at the whiteboard full of connected names and properties, one thought kept nagging at him. The Hendersons wouldn't go down without a fight, and they still didn't know how deep the corruption went. Sheriff Tom Brennan's office sat on the 2nd floor of the county courthouse, a modest room with wood paneling and 20 years of accumulated paperwork. Ryder had never been inside before. He made a point of staying on the right side of the law, even if just barely. Martinez stood beside him as they waited. "Brennan's a good man," the deputy said quietly. "Old school, doesn't tolerate corruption, but he's careful. He won't move without solid evidence." "We've got evidence," Ryder replied, patting the folder under his arm. The door opened. Sheriff Brennan was in his late 50s with steel-gray hair and the weathered face of someone who'd spent decades dealing with the worst humanity had to offer. He looked at Ryder's Ironhawks vest, then at Martinez, and sighed. "Carlos, when you called, saying you needed to talk about the Henderson gang, I didn't expect you'd bring company. With respect, sir, you need to hear what Mr. Reed has to say," Martinez replied. Brennan gestured to chairs. "All right, talk." Ryder laid out everything. The rescue, the investigation, the evidence they'd gathered. He spread documents across the sheriff's desk, bank statements showing payments, forged property records, the pattern of elderly victims. He talked for 10 minutes straight, while Brennan listened in silence. When Ryder finished, the sheriff leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. Son of a Brennan muttered. "I knew something was wrong. Every time I tried to investigate the Hendersons, I'd hit a wall. Reports would go missing. Witnesses would stop cooperating. I thought I was going crazy. You're not crazy." Ryder said, "You've got dirty cops in your department." Brennan's jaw tightened. "You have proof of that?" "Not yet." "But think about it. How else do the Hendersons operate so openly? Martinez here is one of the few deputies I trust. The rest?" Ryder shrugged. "Someone's been feeding them information." The sheriff stared at the evidence spread across his desk. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he looked up at Ryder with tired eyes. "I've been sheriff for 18 years. I've watched this county go from decent to rotten because I couldn't nail the Hendersons. They've got their fingers in everything. Drugs, stolen property, intimidation. And you're right. Someone in my department is protecting them." He tapped the bank statements. "But this is solid. This I can use." "So you'll help us?" Martinez asked. "Help you?" Brennan laughed bitterly. "Son, I've been waiting for someone to hand me this kind of evidence for 5 years. The question is, how do we move forward without tipping off whoever is dirty in my department?" Ryder leaned forward. "We work together, but quietly. You do everything through proper channels, warrants, investigations, by the book. But you only loop in people you trust completely. Meanwhile, the Hawks keep the Washington family safe and watch our backs. You're turning your clubhouse into a fortress, Brennan said. It wasn't a question. Already happening, Ryder confirmed. The Hendersons know we hit them. They're going to retaliate. We're ready. Brennan studied him. You know what you're asking, right? If this goes sideways, if the Hendersons come at you with everything they've got, I can't guarantee backup will arrive in time. We're not asking for guarantees, Ryder said. We're asking for justice, for Margaret Washington and her grandkids, for however many other families the Hendersons have victimized. The sheriff was quiet for a moment. Then he stood and extended his hand. All right, Mr. Reed, you've got your alliance. I'll start building a case. Quietly, I'll work with the DA I trust and keep this circle small, but you need to promise me something. Ryder shook his hand. Name it. No vigilante justice, no matter how bad it gets. You protect your people. You defend yourself if attacked, but you don't go hunting the Hendersons. Let the law handle them. Agreed. Ryder said, We're not looking for a war. We're looking to protect innocent people. Brennan nodded. Then we understand each other. Carlos, you're the liaison between my office and the Hawks. Anything happens, you call me directly, not dispatch, not anyone else. Understood. Yes, sir. By sunset, the Ironhawks clubhouse had transformed into something approaching a military installation. Tommy and 3 others worked on reinforcing the doors with steel bars. Big Joe installed additional security cameras covering every angle of approach. Sarah coordinated a watch rotation, 2 people on duty at all times, armed and alert. Inside, Ryder gathered the core members around the table again. Margaret and the kids were in the back watching a Disney movie for a few hours. They could pretend everything was normal. Brennan's on board, Ryder announced, but it's going to take time to build a case strong enough to stick. Probably a week, maybe more. A week's a long time, Vic said. Hendersons aren't going to wait that long. I know. Ryder looked around at his crew. People he'd ridden with for years. People who'd followed him into danger more times than he could count. That's why we're preparing. Sarah's already called in favors. We've got 3 other motorcycle clubs on standby if we need backup. The Forgotten Riders, the Road Knights, and the Steel Brotherhood. That's over 100 bikers, Tommy said, impressed. The Hendersons want to fight. They'll get one, Big Joe added. But on our terms. Martinez appeared in the doorway, his phone in his hand. His face was grim. We've got a problem, he said. I just got word from a buddy in dispatch. Someone called in a complaint about suspicious activity at this address. So they heard gunshots. That's, Sarah said immediately. We haven't fired a single weapon. I know, Martinez said. But patrol units are on their way. This is a setup. Someone's testing our defenses, seeing how we respond. Ryder stood quickly. All right, everyone. Weapons out of sight. We're a legitimate community center having a normal evening. Margaret, keep the kids in back. Sarah, pull up our non-profit documentation. When those cops arrive, we're cooperative, polite, and completely legal. And if they try to search, Tommy asked, we know our rights, Ryder said. No warrant, no entry, but we don't give them an excuse to escalate. Within minutes, the clubhouse looked almost normal. Weapons were locked in a back room. Documents were ready. Everyone took positions, casual but alert. Ryder stood by the window and watched 2 patrol cars pull into the lot, lights flashing. Here we go, he muttered. Big Joe joined him. Think this is the Hendersons? Testing the waters, Ryder confirmed, seeing if they can use the law against us. Smart, actually. What do we do? Ryder smiled grimly. We show them that we're smarter. As the officers approached the door, Ryder took a deep breath and prepared to play the most important role of his life. A law-abiding citizen with nothing to hide. But behind him, every member of the Ironhawks was coiled and ready. The war might not have started yet, but the first shot had just been fired. The patrol officers left empty-handed after 20 minutes of finding absolutely nothing suspicious. No weapons, no illegal activity, just a community center with proper permits and a family seeking temporary shelter. The false complaint went nowhere, but the message was clear. The Hendersons knew where they were, and they were watching. That was 2 days ago. Now, on the third day since the rescue, Ryder stood in the clubhouse's back room, converted into a war room, studying a hand-drawn map of the Washington farmhouse and surrounding property. Sheriff Brynan sat across from him, along with Martinez and 2 plainclothes detectives Brennan trusted implicitly. "All right," Brennan said, pointing at the map. "Based on the warrants I secured this morning, we have legal authority to raid the property and seize evidence. The question is how we do it without getting anyone killed." Tommy entered carrying a laptop. Vic behind him with a camera. "Boss, we've got the intel you wanted." For the past 2 days, Hawks members had been conducting surveillance on the farmhouse in shifts. They'd used binoculars from distant ridge lines, sent drones with cameras after dark, and even had someone pose as a lost hiker to get close. The Hendersons had returned to the property, moving cautiously now, but still operating. Tommy opened the laptop, showing aerial photos. "They're storing more than we thought. At least 50 crates in the barn, and they're bringing in more every night around midnight. 6 to 8 gang members on site at any given time. Rotating shifts." "Armed?" Brennan asked. "Definitely. We spotted handguns, possibly rifles. They're not taking chances after we hit them the first time." One of Brennan's detectives, a thin man named Foster, studied the photos. "That's a lot of firepower for a simple raid. We go in loud, someone's getting shot." "So, we don't go in loud," Martinez suggested. "We go in smart, cut power, use night vision, catch them off guard." "Or," Sarah said, entering with a coffee pot and fresh determination, "we give them a reason to think the Hawks are the threat, not the police." Everyone looked at her. "The Hendersons are watching us," she continued. "They expect us to make a move." "So, what if we do? What if the Hawks create a distraction somewhere else? Somewhere visible while law enforcement hits the farmhouse?" Brennan considered this a diversion. Draw their attention and resources away from the primary target. "Exactly. We stage something at the old industrial park on the east side. Make noise. Make them think we're coming for their other operations. While they scramble to respond, you hit the farmhouse hard and fast." Ryder nodded slowly. "It could work, but timing's got to be perfect. And we need to know exactly what we're walking into," Foster added. "The layout, entry points, where they're likely to make a stand. I can help with that." Everyone turned. Cody stood in the doorway, still wearing pajamas, but looking more alert than he had in days. Behind him, Margaret watched nervously. "Cody, buddy, you should be resting," Big Joe said gently. "I know that farm better than anyone," Cody insisted, walking to the table. He looked at the map, then pointed with a small finger. "This drawing's wrong. There's another cellar entrance here behind the barn. The door's hidden under old boards. Grandpa used it for storm shelter." Ryder and Brennan exchanged glances. "Show me," Ryder said, pulling the boy closer. Cody traced the map with surprising precision. "The main cellar has 2 rooms. The gang's using the big room for storage. That's where all the crates are. But there's a smaller room that connects through a crawl space. If someone goes in through the hidden entrance, they could get to the crates without the gang even knowing." "You're saying there's a way to access their storage area without going through the main house?" Martinez asked, impressed. "Yeah, Grandpa showed me when I was little. He said it was our secret escape route if there was ever a tornado." Cody's voice dropped. "I tried to use it the night they came, but it was locked from inside. They must have found it." Brennan leaned forward. "Son, this hidden entrance, could a team of officers fit through it?" "If they're not too big. Cody said seriously. It's kinda narrow. Tommy was already marking the new information on the map. This changes everything. We can insert a team through the hidden entrance while the main force goes through the front. Catch them in a pincer movement. Ryder knelt down to Cody's level. You've been incredibly brave, Cody. What you're telling us could help stop these bad men for good. Are you absolutely sure about this entrance? Cody met his eyes with unexpected intensity. I'm sure, and I want to help. They locked my grandma in a cellar. They scared my sister and brother. They need to be stopped. They will be, Ryder promised, putting a hand on the boy's shoulder. We're going to make sure they can never hurt anyone again. You have my word. Margaret stepped forward, placing her hands on Cody's shoulders. That's enough, sweetheart. Let the adults handle the rest. But as she led Cody away, the boy looked back at Ryder. Mr. Ryder, when you stop them, will we be able to go home? Ryder felt that familiar ache in his chest. Yeah, buddy, you'll go home, I promise. After they left, the room fell silent for a moment. Kid's got courage, Foster said quietly. He's been through hell, Brennan replied, which is why we need to get this right. No mistakes, no casualties. We go in, we shut them down, and we make sure the evidence sticks. For the next 2 hours, they refine the plan. Brennan would lead the main assault team. 8 officers, all carefully vetted, all trusted. Martinez would lead the secondary team through the hidden cellar entrance. The Hawks would create the diversion at the industrial park, timing it to draw maximum attention. Strike time 2 Conog a.m. the following night. The Hendersons typically move shipments between midnight and 3 a.m. They'd be active, but hopefully not expecting an attack. As the meeting broke up, Brennan pulled Ryder aside. I want to be clear about something, the sheriff said. When this goes down, your people stay at that industrial park. You create the distraction, then you pull back. No heroics, no riding to the rescue. We handle the farmhouse. Understood. Ryder agreed. We're not looking to be heroes. We just want those kids safe. Brennan studied him. You know, when Carlos first came to me with this, I thought you bikers were just trouble looking for a fight. I was wrong. You're doing what I should have done years ago. You're doing it now. Ryder said that's what matters. That evening, as darkness fell over the clubhouse, Ryder gathered his crew one final time. Tomorrow night we end this, he told them. The Hendersons have terrorized this county long enough. We show them that people here aren't afraid anymore. That families like the Washingtons have protectors. Big Joe raised his coffee cup. Ride for those who can't, ride for those who can't, the others echoed. Across the room, Cody watched through a crack in the door, his small hands gripping the frame. He told them about the secret entrance. He'd given them the information they needed. Now all he could do was wait and pray that the bikers who'd saved him once could save his home, too. Tomorrow night, everything would change. 200 a.m. The moon hung low over the industrial park, casting long shadows across abandoned warehouses and rusted equipment. 8 Ironhawks motorcycles roared into the parking lot, engines screaming, headlights blazing. They circled the empty buildings in formation, making as much noise as possible. Tommy fired up an air horn. Big Joe revved his engine until it echoed off the metal walls like thunder. "Come on, you cowards!" Sarah shouted into the darkness, playing her role perfectly. "We know you're using this place. Show yourselves." 3 blocks away, Ryder watched from a rooftop through binoculars. 2 Henderson gang vehicles had already peeled away from the farmhouse, racing toward the industrial park to investigate the disturbance. The bait was working. Strike Team 1. "You're clear," Ryder said into his radio. They took the bait. "Go now." Sheriff Brennan's convoy moved without lights down Old Miller Road for vehicles carrying 8 officers in tactical gear. They parked a 1/4 mile from the farmhouse and approached on foot through the woods, weapons ready, night vision goggles, painting the world in shades of green. Martinez led the secondary team, 3 officers, all small enough to fit through the hidden cellar entrance Cody had described. They circled wide, approaching from the barn side where the secret door lay hidden beneath rotted boards. Through his night vision, Brennan could see the farmhouse clearly. Lights blazed in the barn. 2 gang members stood outside, smoking, rifles slung casually over their shoulders. Inside, more shadows moved, loading crates into a truck. "They're moving product," Brennan whispered into his radio, probably spooked by the activity at the industrial park. "Everyone hold position until Martinez confirms entry through the secondary entrance." Martinez and his team reached the barn's rear wall. Using bolt cutters, they quietly removed the padlock Cody had mentioned. The hidden door creaked open, revealing stone steps descending into darkness. Strike Team 2 entering now. Martinez breathed into his mic. They descended carefully, weapons drawn, each step measured. The cellar smelled of earth and mildew. Martinez could hear voices above them, muffled conversations, footsteps on floorboards. They moved through the narrow crawl space Cody had described, emerging into the main storage area. 50 crates, just like the surveillance photos showed, and standing guard over them, a Henderson gang member checking his phone, oblivious. Martinez raised 3 fingers. 2, 1. They burst from the shadows. "Police, hands up." Now the gang member fumbled for his weapon. Martinez was faster, tackling him to the ground before he could draw. The man's phone clattered across the concrete, its screen illuminating a text message. Cop said, "Industrial Park. False alarm. Too late." Above them, someone shouted, "What the hell?" Brennan's team hit the front entrance simultaneously, battering ram, taking the barn door off its hinges with a splintering crash. Sheriff's department, everyone on the ground. Now, the gang members in the barn froze for a split second, that crucial moment between fight and flight. 2 dropped their weapons immediately, hands up, but 3 others ran for the side exit, and the 2 guards outside opened fire. Bullets sparked off the barn's metal siding. Brennan's team took cover behind equipment, returning fire with disciplined bursts. The sharp crack of gunfire shattered the night. "Suspects fleeing toward the house," someone shouted. Foster and 2 other officers gave chase. The gang members made it to the farmhouse porch before Foster fired a warning shot that splintered with inches from their feet. "Last chance. Drop your weapons." One gang member threw his gun down. The other 2 ducked inside the house. That's when Dale Washington stumbled onto the porch, drunk and confused, waving a pistol he probably didn't know how to use. "What's happening?" "Get off my property," he slurred. "Dale Washington, drop the weapon," Foster commanded. Dale swung the pistol toward the officer's finger on the trigger. A single shot rang out. Not from the police, from inside the barn where Martinez had emerged from the cellar. His shot went high, intentionally missing Dale, but close enough to scare him sober. The stepfather yelped and dropped the gun, hands shooting up. "Don't shoot! Don't shoot!" Foster was on him in seconds, slamming him face first onto the porch, cuffing him roughly. "You're under arrest for child endangerment, conspiracy, and about a dozen other charges. You have the right to remain silent." Inside the house, the last 2 gang members surrendered when they realized they were surrounded. They stumbled out with hands raised, cursing but beaten. From the barn, officers dragged out the captured gang members one by one. 9 arrests total. Not a single casualty, criminal or cop. Brennan surveyed the scene, breathing hard. "Secure the perimeter. Martinez, document everything in that cellar. I want photos of every crate, every serial number. This is going to trial, and I want it airtight." At the industrial park, Ryder's radio crackled. "All clear. Suspects in custody. 0 casualties. Repeat, 0 casualties." Relief flooded through him, Hawks pulled back. Mission accomplished. Returned to base. The motorcycles roared away into the night, their work done. An hour later, at the farmhouse, Brennan watched his officers process the crime scene. Evidence bags piled up. Weapons, drugs, forged documents, stolen goods worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. A patrol car pulled up. Martinez opened the back door, and Cody climbed out, clutching Ryder's leather vest, the one Ryder had given him to hold for good luck. The boy's eyes went wide as he saw the flashing lights, the arrested gang members, the officers swarming his property. "Is it over?" Cody asked quietly. Ryder, who'd arrived minutes earlier, knelt beside him. "It's over. They're going to jail. Every one of them. Your grandma's property is safe now." Cody looked at the farmhouse, his home, lit up by police lights, but finally free of the men who terrorized them. Tears rolled down his cheeks, but he was smiling. "You kept your promise," he whispered. "Always do," Ryder replied, ruffling his hair. "Always do." Dale was shoved into a police car, still shouting drunk excuses nobody wanted to hear. As the car pulled away, Cody watched without expression. The man who should have protected them had betrayed them instead, but now he'd faced justice. Margaret arrived in a van driven by Maria, rushing to embrace her grandson. "Baby, oh my baby, we can go home. We can really go home." Sheriff Brennan approached them, removing his hat respectfully. "Ma'am, we'll need a few days to process everything as evidence, but yes, this is your property, free and clear. The fraudulent liens will be removed, and I guarantee no one will threaten you again." Margaret turned to Ryder, tears streaming. She didn't say anything, just hugged him tight while her grandson clung to his vest. Around them, officers worked. Evidence was catalogued. Criminals were transported. Justice, slow but inevitable, ground forward. And standing in the middle of it all, Ryder felt something he hadn't felt in years. Peace. The job wasn't done yet. There was still a trial to come, a network to dismantle. But tonight, they'd won. Tonight, a family got their home back. That was enough. The evidence was damning. 5 days after the raid, Sheriff Brennan sat in the district attorney's office, surrounded by cardboard boxes filled with documents, hard drives, and financial records seized from the farmhouse. What they'd uncovered went far beyond a simple drug operation. "This is a complete criminal enterprise," DA Rebecca Walsh said, spreading photographs across her conference table. She was a sharp woman in her 40s, who'd built her career on taking down organized crime. They weren't just storing drugs. They were running a systematic land-grabbing operation across 6 counties. Brennan pointed to a laptop screen showing spreadsheets. "We pulled this from one of the Henderson lieutenant's computers. It's a complete ledger. 18 properties targeted over 2 years. Total estimated value $7 million. Martinez, who'd been working around the clock analyzing the evidence, added, "They'd identify elderly rural property owners, usually widows or widowers living alone. Then they'd fabricate debts using shell companies, storage fees, equipment rental, property maintenance. They'd forge signatures, file fraudulent liens, and force foreclosures. Once they owned the property," Walsh continued, "they'd use it for criminal operations until the heat got too close, then flip it for profit. Clean the money, move to the next target. Sophisticated and ruthless." "But here's the worst part," Brennan said grimly. He slid a folder across the table. "We found payoff records." The Hendersons were paying someone inside law enforcement, someone who gave them advanced warning of investigations, who made reports disappear, who protected them for years. Walsh opened the folder. Her face went pale. "Deputy Frank Holloway," Brennan said, his voice heavy. 20-year veteran. My senior deputy. He's been on the Henderson payroll for at least 3 years, maybe longer. Took $60,000 in payments. The betrayal stung. Holloway had worked alongside Martinez, had sat in morning briefings, had eaten lunch with officers who trusted him, and the whole time he'd been selling them out. "Where is he now?" Walsh asked. "In custody. I arrested him personally 2 hours ago." Brennan's jaw was set. "He'll face charges of corruption, obstruction of justice, and conspiracy. I'm recommending maximum sentencing." Walsh nodded approvingly. "Good. We're going to need every bit of this evidence documented perfectly. The Hendersons' defense attorneys will look for any crack in our case. They won't find one." Martinez said, "We've got financial records, forged documents, witness testimony, physical evidence, and now a corrupt deputy who kept detailed records of his own crimes. This case is bulletproof. Then it's time to go public," Walsh decided. "Sheriff, I want you to hold a press conference this afternoon. Announce the arrests, expose the scheme, and make it clear that this county won't tolerate corruption anymore. At 3:00 p.m., the courthouse steps filled with reporters. News vans from 3 states lined the street. The story had exploded. Small-town corruption, a land-grabbing ring, a dramatic midnight raid. It had everything. Sheriff Brennan stepped to the microphone cluster flanked by D.A. Walsh and 2 FBI agents who joined the investigation once the scope became clear. 5 days ago, my department conducted a coordinated raid on a rural property being used by the Henderson criminal organization. Brennan began, his voice steady and strong. That raid resulted in 9 arrests and the seizure of evidence documenting a systematic criminal enterprise spanning multiple counties and involving fraud, extortion, and corruption. Cameras flashed. Reporters scribbled notes. The Henderson gang targeted elderly property owners, fabricated debts, forged legal documents, and forced illegal foreclosures. We have identified 18 victims so far with a combined property value exceeding $7 million. More victims may come forward." He paused, letting that sink in. "Additionally, I must announce that Deputy Frank Holloway has been arrested and charged with corruption and obstruction of justice. He accepted bribes from the Henderson organization and actively worked to undermine investigations." A murmur rippled through the press corps. "This ends today," Brennan continued, his voice hardening. "The Henderson gang's rural operations are finished. Their network is collapsing as we speak. And anyone else involved, anyone who helped them, anyone who looked the other way will be held accountable." A reporter shouted a question. "Sheriff, how did you finally break the case?" Brennan glanced at Martinez, standing off to the side, then spoke carefully. "A family reached out for help. Concerned citizens provided information, and good officers did their jobs despite obstacles. This case proves that when the community works together with law enforcement, justice prevails." He didn't mention the Iron Hawks by name. Didn't need to. Everyone in the county knew who'd rescued the Washington family that first night. The press conference aired on every local channel. Within hours, the story went statewide. By evening, it was on national news. The impact was immediate. 3 more Henderson gang members turned themselves in, hoping for plea deals. 2 county officials resigned when their connections to the scheme were exposed. The FBI opened investigations in neighboring counties where similar patterns emerged. The Henderson gang's empire crumbled in less than a week. At the clubhouse, the Hawks watched the news coverage and satisfaction. Margaret and the kids had been moved to protective custody in a safe location, a comfortable apartment provided by victim services until the trials concluded. Witnesses needed protection, and the Hawks had volunteered to help. "We've got transport duty tomorrow," Tommy announced, checking his phone. "Taking 3 witnesses to the courthouse for preliminary hearings. Sheriff wants a visible presence. We'll run 4 bikes." Ryder decided full colors. "Let anyone watching know these witnesses are protected." Sarah smiled. "We're basically unofficial courthouse security now." "Fine by me," Big Joe said. "Beats sitting around." Over the next 2 weeks, the Iron Hawks became a familiar sight at the county courthouse. They transported witnesses, stood guard during proceedings, and made their presence known, not as vigilantes, as community protectors working alongside law enforcement. The message was clear. Testify honestly, and you'll be safe. Try to intimidate witnesses, and you'll answer to both the law and the Hawks. No one was intimidated. One afternoon, Ryder stood outside the courthouse watching Dale Washington being led inside for his arraignment. The stepfather looked broken, sober now, but haunted. He'd lost everything. His freedom, the family he'd betrayed, his dignity. Margaret appeared beside Ryder, dressed in a simple blue dress for her testimony. "He's going to prison," she said quietly, watching Dale disappear inside. "Probably for a long time," Ryder confirmed. "I should feel satisfaction," Margaret said. "But I just feel sad. He could have been good for those kids. He could have protected them. Instead, she trailed off. Instead, he chose wrong." Ryder finished. "That's on him, not you." Margaret turned to look at him. "Mr. Reed, when this is all over, when the trials are done and we can go home, will you come visit? Cody asks about you every day. So do Emma and Jake. They think you're a hero." Ryder felt that familiar ache in his chest. "Ma'am, I'm no hero. I'm just someone who couldn't walk away." "That's exactly what makes you a hero," Margaret said, patting his arm. "You saw someone who needed help, and you helped. In my book, that's everything." Inside the courthouse, the wheels of justice turned. Evidence was presented. Witnesses testified. The case against the Henderson gang and their corrupt enablers built brick by brick into an unassailable wall. And on the courthouse steps, wearing their Iron Hawks colors with pride, Ryder and his crew stood watch, protecting those who couldn't protect themselves, just like they always had. The story exploded beyond anyone's expectations. First, it was the local news stations running features about the rescue. Then, the regional papers picked it up. Within 2 weeks, national outlets were calling it a modern David and Goliath story, a motorcycle club taking on organized crime to save a family. But it was a single interview that changed everything. Margaret Washington sat on her temporary apartment couch, Cody beside her, and told her story to Channel 7 News. The reporter, a young woman named Jessica Chun, let Margaret speak without interruption. "They locked us in our own cellar," Margaret said, her voice steady despite the tears. "My grandchildren were terrified. My husband built that farm with his own hands 50 years ago, and these criminals were going to steal it. I thought we'd lost everything." The camera panned to Cody, who clutched a stuffed bear the Hawks had given him. But this little hero ran through the dark woods in his bare feet. Margaret continued, squeezing Cody's hand. He found the Iron Hawks at a gas station and begged them for help. And they came without hesitation. Without asking for anything, they came and saved us. Jessica asked, "What do you want people to know about the Iron Hawks?" Margaret looked directly into the camera that they're not what people think. They wear leather and ride loud motorcycles. And yes, they look intimidating. But when we needed help, when the law couldn't reach us in time, they were there. They're good people. Heroes in every sense of the word. The interview aired during prime time. The response was overwhelming. By the next morning, the Iron Hawks clubhouse phone was ringing constantly. Sarah fielded calls from people wanting to help, to donate, to express gratitude. "A woman in Cleveland just pledged $500 for the Washington family," Sarah announced, hanging up and immediately answering another call. "A church group in Pennsylvania wants to send furniture. A construction company offered free labor for repairs." Ryder stood in the middle of the clubhouse, overwhelmed. "How much have we collected?" Tommy checked the donation website they'd hastily set up. His eyes went wide. "Boss, we're at $43,000 and it's still climbing." $43,000, Big Joe repeated, stunned. "In less than 24 hours. People are responding to the story," Maria said, reading comments on social media. "Listen to this. Finally, someone stood up to these criminals. The Iron Hawks deserve medals. And this one, I donated because if more people were like these bikers, the world would be a better place. Ryder felt something shift in his chest. For years, the Hawks had done charity work, toy drives, veteran support, youth programs, but they'd always been viewed with suspicion. Bikers were outlaws in most people's minds, even the good ones. But now the community saw them differently. Now they were heroes. The transformation was visible everywhere. When Hawks rode through town, people waved instead of avoiding eye contact. Local businesses put up signs. Iron Hawks, welcome here. The diner where they usually ate breakfast started refusing to charge them no matter how much they insisted on paying. You saved that family. The owner, a gray-haired woman named Ruth, said firmly, "Your money's no good here anymore." At the hardware store, when Tommy went to buy supplies for clubhouse repairs, the manager gave him a 50% discount. "For everything you do for this community," he said simply. But the most profound change came from unexpected places. One afternoon, a black sedan pulled up to the clubhouse. Two men in expensive suits stepped out, clearly not bikers, clearly nervous. Ryder met them at the door. "Help you, gentlemen." The older man extended his hand. "Mr. Reed, I'm Marcus Chun, Jessica's father, the reporter who interviewed Mrs. Washington. I'm also a lawyer. I'd like to offer my services pro bono to help the Washington family secure their property rights permanently." Ryder shook his hand, surprised. "That's generous of you." "It's necessary," Marcus replied. "What happened to that family happens to too many people. Someone needs to stand up for them. My daughter's interview convinced me that someone should be me." The second man stepped forward. "I'm David Thornton, County Real Estate Supervisor. I've been reviewing property records since the sheriff's press conference. I found 6 more families with suspicious liens, all elderly, all targeted by shell companies. With your help, I'd like to contact them and offer assistance." By the end of the week, 8 families had come forward as victims of similar schemes. Each one had a story of intimidation, forged documents, and stolen land. And each one found protection and legal support through the network the Hawks had built. The criminal impact was equally significant. The Red Scorpions, a rival gang that had operated in the neighboring county, quietly disbanded after the Henderson bust. Their clubhouse sat empty, members scattering rather than risk the same scrutiny. Other criminal operations pulled back from the region entirely. The message was clear. This county was no longer easy territory. Law enforcement was active, the community was alert, and the Iron Hawks stood ready to protect their own. Sheriff Brennan told Ryder over coffee one morning, "Crime rates are down 18% since the rate. 18% in 3 weeks." "That's unheard of. Fear works both ways," Ryder replied. "The bad guys are afraid now instead of the good guys. It's more than fear," Brennan said. "It's hope. People believe justice is possible again. They believe someone's watching out for them." A month after the rescue, the Iron Hawks held a community barbecue at the clubhouse. It was something they'd done for years, but this time felt different. 300 people showed up. Families with children, elderly couples, veterans, local business owners. They came to say thank you, to meet the bikers who'd changed their community to celebrate justice. Cody ran through the crowd, wearing a child-sized Iron Hawks vest, a gift from the crew, playing with a dozen other kids. Emma and Jake chased him, laughing. Margaret sat at a picnic table surrounded by well-wishers, her face glowing with happiness Ryder hadn't seen before. Big Joe manned the grill, flipping burgers while his own kids helped pass out plates. Sarah coordinated the donation table, still collecting funds for the Washington family's permanent relocation. Tommy played cornhole with some local teenagers who'd shown up curious about the famous bikers. Ryder stood apart, watching it all, when a familiar voice spoke behind him. "Not bad for a bunch of outlaws." He turned to find Sheriff Brennan in civilian clothes, holding a soda. "We're not outlaws," Ryder said with a slight smile. "We're just people who care. The community knows that now, Brennan replied. You changed how people see you. Hell, you changed how I see you. Across the yard, Margaret caught Ryder's eye and waved, mouthing, Thank you for perhaps the 100th time. Ryder waved back, feeling that familiar ache in his chest transform into something else, something like peace. The Iron Hawks had always stood for something, but now, finally, the world could see it, too. They weren't outlaws. They were protectors, and the community had embraced them as family. 6 weeks after the rescue, a caravan of vehicles rolled down a newly paved driveway toward what had once been the Washington farmhouse. But it wasn't the same place anymore. Ryder led the convoy on his Harley with Margaret, Cody, Emma, and Jake following in Big Joe's truck. Behind them came 24 more vehicles, hawks, volunteers, donors, and community members who'd contributed to the transformation. As they rounded the final bend, Margaret gasped. The old decaying farmhouse was gone. In its place stood a modest but beautiful single-story home with fresh white siding, a wraparound porch with new railings and flower boxes beneath sparkling windows. The barn had been repaired and repainted a cheerful red. The overgrown yard was now neatly landscaped with young trees and a stone path leading to the front door. "Oh my God," Margaret whispered, tears already streaming down her face. "Oh my God." Big Joe pulled to a stop, and Cody practically exploded out of the truck, his mini Ironhawks vest, an exact replica of the adult versions, flapping behind him as he ran. "Is this really ours?" he shouted. "Is this really our house?" Ryder climbed off his bike, grinning. "Every inch of it, buddy. Welcome home." The past 6 weeks had been a whirlwind. Once the donation funds reached $75,000, Ryder had approached Margaret with a proposal. Instead of just repairing the old farmhouse, why not rebuild it entirely? The structure had been too damaged, too full of bad memories. A fresh start deserved a fresh home. Margaret had wept and said yes. What followed was a community effort that would have made any reality TV show jealous. The local construction company that had offered free labor brought in a full crew. Volunteers worked weekends. Material suppliers donated at cost. The Ironhawks themselves spent countless hours hammering, painting, and hauling. Tommy had overseen the construction. His day job as a contractor finally useful beyond bike repairs. Sarah had coordinated volunteers and supply deliveries with military precision. Maria had designed the interior with Margaret's input. 3 bedrooms, a large kitchen, wheelchair-accessible bathroom for Margaret's aging joints, and a playroom for the kids. Now, standing before the finished home, it felt like a miracle. "Can we go inside?" Emma asked shyly, clutching her grandmother's hand. "In a minute, sweetie," Ryder said. He walked to the porch and turned to face the crowd that had gathered. "Before we do the official handover, I want to say something." The crowd quieted. News cameras invited for this moment, zoomed in. 6 weeks ago, a little boy ran out of the woods and asked for help. Ryder began his voice carrying across the yard. He didn't know us, had no reason to trust us, but he was desperate and he was brave. And because of his courage, we were able to save his family from a terrible situation. He looked at Cody, who stood straighter, proud despite his young age. But what happened next was bigger than one rescue. Ryder continued. This community came together. People from all over the country donated money. Volunteers gave their time. Businesses provided materials. Everyone contributed because they believed in something simple. Families deserve to be safe. People deserve to be protected. And when good people work together, incredible things happen. He pulled out a set of keys from his pocket. "Mrs. Washington, on behalf of the Ironhawks Motorcycle Club and everyone who contributed to this project, it's my honor to give you the keys to your new home. Debt-free, legally secure, and built with love by people who care about you and your grandchildren. Margaret walked up to the porch, supported by Maria, sobbing so hard she could barely stand. Ryder placed the keys in her trembling hand and closed her fingers around them. "You gave us a future," Margaret choked out, looking up at him. "My babies have a safe place to grow up. I have a home to grow old in. You didn't just save us that night. You gave us our lives back." She threw her arms around Ryder and he hugged her back, his own eyes wet. The crowd erupted in applause. "All right, kids," Big Joe announced loudly. "Who wants to see their new rooms?" Cody, Emma, and Jake didn't need to be asked twice. They raced up the porch steps and through the front door, their excited squeals echoing through the house. The volunteers followed, giving tours and showing off their handiwork. Inside, the home was perfect. Hardwood floors gleamed. Fresh paint covered every wall in warm, welcoming colors. The kitchen had modern appliances donated by a local retailer. Each child's bedroom was decorated according to their interests. Dinosaurs for Jake, princesses for Emma, and superheroes for Cody. In Cody's room, someone had painted a mural on one wall, Ironhawk's motorcycles riding across the sunset. The boy stopped in his tracks, staring. "Do you like it?" Sarah asked, appearing beside him. "It's the best thing I've ever seen," Cody breathed. Tommy knelt down to his level. "That's to remind you that you're part of our family now. Always. No matter what happens, the Hawks have your back." Cody hugged him fiercely. Outside on the newly built porch, Ryder stood with Sheriff Brennan and Deputy Martinez, watching the celebration unfold. "You did good work here," Brennan said quietly. "Real good work." "Wasn't just me," Ryder replied. "Took a whole community led by you," Martinez pointed out. "You're the one who refused to look away. You started this." Across the yard, Cody had found a football and was organizing a game with other kids. His Mini Hawks vest making him easy to spot. Emma pushed Jake on a tire swing someone had hung from an old oak tree. Margaret stood on the porch watching her grandchildren play in safety for the first time in months, her face radiant. "My daughter would have been Cody's age," Ryder said suddenly, surprising himself. He rarely talked about her. She died when she was 6. Cancer. Brennan and Martinez were silent, respectful. "Every time I look at these kids," Ryder continued, "I think about her, about what she didn't get to do, didn't get to be, and I think if I can help make sure other kids get their chance, get to grow up safe and loved, then maybe that means something. Maybe that honors her memory." "It does," Brennan said firmly. "It absolutely does." As the sun began to set, casting golden light across the property, someone started a bonfire. Marshmallows appeared. Guitar music drifted through the air. The celebration shifted into something softer, more intimate, a community gathering around a family that had found its way home. Cody found